So hello, once again, welcome everyone to our CS WGCapD EOTEC DevNet webinar on decision makers' perspectives on the evolving demand for EO capacity building. I'm Erin Martin with the EOTEC DevNet Secretariat, and I'm going to turn things over to our co-host Daniel Matsapola from the South African National Space Agency to welcome you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Erin. My name is Dan Matsapola, Space Education Manager at the South African National Space Agency. I'm also chair of the CEO's Working Group on Capacity Building and Data Democracy, also known as WGCapD. Before we begin, I want to note that the World Economic Forum recently updated its research on the economic value of Earth observation. The report is called Earth Observation, Unlocking the $700 billion Opportunity. It estimates that Earth observation already contributes about $440 billion to the global economy each year and could generate an additional $263 billion annually if its use becomes more widespread. What's interesting is that the report says the biggest challenge is no longer the technology itself. We already have many powerful Earth observation tools and applications. The challenge is helping organizations put those capabilities into practice. This is where capacity building comes in. That is also why this conversation today about evolving user needs for Earth observation capacity building is so important. And also why WGCapD is very pleased to host this with our global network of networks, EOTEC DevNet. If we want to unlock the full value of Earth observation, we need to invest not only in technology, but also in people, partnerships, and capacity needed to turn data into decisions. As former CEO of CEOs would have said, Stephen Ramage, human interoperability is key to unlocking more meaningful collaboration in the use of Earth observation to move the development needle upward, forward, and live forward. So you are all very welcome today. I will turn things over to our moderator, Natasha Sadoff. Natasha is a program manager in NASA Earth Action. She oversees the ARSET, NASA's own training and workforce development program, as well as EarthRise and the Satellite Needs Working Group. Natasha, thank you for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dan. Hi, everyone. Before I start, I really want to thank Dan very much to welcome you all and make sure that you understand the important role that he has had in CSWGCapD and acknowledge that his term as chair of WGCapD is coming to an end after 3 years of service, and that Dan, you've done so much for the working group and for CEOS. You've focused so much attention on the importance of getting youth and early career scientists involved in earth science, and I hope that we can continue in that tradition, and hopefully we'll still see you in the community. So thanks again for the introduction. So again, my name is Natasha Sadoff. I sit at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C. I'm so excited to be here to have this conversation with you because this topic is really important at NASA, and I think we'll see for so many of us all across the world that are working in this industry. And even just in the EOTEC DevNet communities, communities of practice, and throughout other community engagement, as well as the work that we're doing at NASA, we've seen 3 key things. So I'll set the stage. Number 1 of those things is the growing audience for Earth observations. And a lot of that audience doesn't have remote sensing or technical backgrounds. They just know that this information might be useful for their jobs, their decision making, maybe their research. Number 2, AI is influencing all the aspects of Earth observation capacity building, from the learning objectives, how to do Earth observations and AI analysis, to the methods and the formats for capacity building. Number 3, changing demand from users. They want more interactive and targeted training. They want curated learning pathways, targeted self-guided curricula, more hands-on and experiential learning. There's a lot more early career and youth professionals or young professionals that want to be a part of this industry, and they need to make sure that the opportunities are matching their interests. So we're seeing these evolving needs, these evolving users, and then with AI, these evolving technologies. So this is why we're here. There's a lot at stake. There's a lot riding on this. You heard from Dan with that World Bank report. The numbers are astounding with how this industry is driving and can continue to drive the economy. But we know that there's a huge gap between the skills that are required in today's workforce and where we need to be. So a few statistics. We know 80% approximately of European Earth observation industry leaders said in a survey that in 2024 and in 2025, they're having difficulty hiring people with the skills that they need. And that was from the European Association of Remote Sensing Companies. And then similarly, 87% of African business leaders said in a World Bank survey that digital skill development is a top priority that they need to focus on. And then research by IEEE GRSS suggests that the geospatial workforce is 10 to 15 years behind where employees need to be in terms of their skills. So we see the opportunity, we see the urgency, and that's why this discussion is so important, and we're glad you're here. So we'll get into the presenters. I think if you haven't done so, it's great to see where you're all from. So put in the chat your name and where you come from. So we'll have some time now for presentations. Thank you so much to our 3 speakers who are giving so generously of their time and their insights. Each presenter will speak for about 10 minutes, and then we'll save questions and discussion for the end, and we'll have a discussion, and feel free to participate in the chat. So I'll introduce each speaker before their talk. So first, I'd like to welcome Professor Alejandro Román Molinas, and he's the Director General of Aerospace Development at the Paraguayan Space Agency, the co-chair of AmeriGEO, and the chair of IAF Access Committee. And I'm excited to hear from him. You all should be too. The insights that he's gained on Earth observation capacity needs of government agencies and other public decision makers. So, Professor Alejandro, welcome.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Thank you very much to the organizing team for the kind invitation. It will be a pleasure to share with you what we have accomplished in this so short period of time in Paraguay. There are too much lessons learned that we can share. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, yes. We built our national space capacity in Paraguay, mostly in Earth observation and basic space engineering with international cooperation. We flipped the script. Rather than waiting for sovereign hardware, we developed our own applications using EO satellite data in agriculture, disaster risk reduction, and environmental monitoring. We changed as the demand also changed. For example, old model we have, the target, it was train EO experts. The core focus is satellite processing. The scale is limited. And now, as Natasha said, we are more focusing on the user side to train to the decision makers. The core focus is application and impacts, especially in the agriculture and disaster risk reduction areas. And the scale is huge, thousands and thousands of users. The vulnerability paradox, not only Latin America, I think all the emerging countries face the same. High vulnerability, infrastructure deficit, and institutional constraints. This is an urgent necessity for real-time geospatial intelligence because the disasters occurs now more frequently and more intensely everywhere in the world. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the evolution of Paraguay, we select the path to identify national needs, apply the global EO data free and open, and build local human capacity in the GeoLab, the National Earth Observation Laboratory here in the Paraguay Space Agency, and finally to develop sovereign hardware in the future. But we need to start with the knowledge first. The GeoLab, the lab or laboratory of Earth observation, we are using open data. NASA has, and other space agency has this open data and open science focus, and we just reach all the availability of data possible with many sources, and we process here in the lab to produce interactive web and mobile dashboards and other applications, and also maps and analysis for all the decision makers in disaster risk reduction and agriculture and other areas. We have the leveraging of the international cooperation with UNOSA, the International Charter for Space and Major Disaster, the UN Spider, the IAF, GEO, CEOs, JICA, JAXA, and other stakeholders that help Paraguay to develop our own capacity from a limited operational capacity to delivering more than 40 operational products to public institutions until now in almost 8 years. One of them is the disaster management on the simulation of floodings that you can see at the left side of the screen, and other is on the monitoring of agricultural plots here in Paraguay, crops here in Paraguay. This is the signing ceremony with JICA, and immediately we start to work with international partners, like in the public and private sector. We incorporate many institutions in the team in order to co-develop, and co-development is very important for us. We developed, for example, with a private company in Japan, app free for the Paraguayan agriculture producers. They can monitor their crops directly without knowing anything about satellite data. You can see in the left side of the screen how they can directly interact with the platform. Very simple, very intuitive, and is the satellite image downloading, processing, and visualization in the palm of their hands. Sorry, this is something that is already implemented and now is in planning expansion. This is a concrete action. This is the photo that you are seeing now is the launch of this platform to the Paraguayan society, the institutions, the universities, and the private sector agricultural producers, with a huge impact. This is another prototype that we are working on the hydrological resources monitoring. The El Nino is coming, and we need to be prepared, and we are trying to use all the international cooperation possible in order to reach the data, the procedures, the methodologies, and the tools that we can use for helping the decision makers to make decisions. This is our lab. We are receiving many institutions, students here to work with us to learn how to process satellite data in disaster risk reduction, as I mentioned, in also with NASA firms and other sources. We are monitoring the fires here in Paraguay, and also we are working very closely. Paraguay has 30% of the national GDP related to agriculture. Then every technology that we can implement to improve the agricultural production is a very, very good idea. The Paraguayan playbook, we have 5 lessons. We start with application, not hardware. The human capacity is the core product. The human capacity is the main focus right now. International cooperation accelerates our progress, and public-private synergy scales the impact. And finally, the space tech must solve local problems. It needs to be applied to real problems, real-life problems. Finally, we are also working with the high schools. As you can see, we are receiving many students to learn satellite data processing in the 4 months period of time here in the lab. It was this lab is crowded many times with students, and it's a very good example of how the technology can change lives, not only impact in the decision making, but also change lives in the young professionals, in the young students. Finally, all this effort was awarded by, for example, ESRI. We achieved the last year as ESRI Special Achievement in GIS Award. We have a very strong partnership with ESRI. They are providing us $350,000 in licenses every year as a collaboration. Well, for emerging countries, space technology is not about prestige. It's about resilience, development, sovereignty, and of course, improving lives. Thank you very much. I hope I don't pass my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro, for the great presentation and so many great visuals. I love seeing the students in the lab. What a great set of ideas and inspiration that you shared. Thank you so much. Well, we'll save questions. So we'll go on to our second presenter, Albert Momo. So Albert, I welcome you to come on camera. Albert is the co-founder of GeoDEV International, former vice president and executive director at Trimble Incorporated, and a former USAID and Surveyor lead. So he'll focus in his talk on Earth observation capacity needs of the private sector, as well as governments and some other decision makers. So his talk, EO capacity, what's working and what must change in an AI-driven era. So welcome, Albert.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, everyone. It's my pleasure to be on this webinar. Like Natasha said, I want to present what's working and what must change to meet private sector capacity needs in an AI-driven era. And I started with I'm going to start with my experience at Trimble and what made me and others fund the company called GeoDEV International, where we are trying to help emerging countries in the Earth observation venture. So we helping them setting up special policies, and also for some of them actually launch their own satellite. And we just opened an academy in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, West Africa, in order to build the capacity of public service personnel and also private sector entities that are looking into the use of Earth observation products. So for this presentation, of course, I'm going to focus only on the private sector, which, as you all know, is the fastest growing source of demand for Earth observation. And one thing that we notice both in the developed and emerging world is the landscape that is shaping all of that. So we have new user communities, more and more companies in various sectors, logistics, insurance, energy, are increasingly demand EO-derived insight or products. And of course, with the advent of AI, we notice the use of those AI-enabled workflows that allow non-experts to consume Earth observation-based analytics. And there is this need of more decision-making or near real-time information that will help managing risk, optimize operations, and meet some of the ESG and regulatory requirements. Next, please. So what's working today? I would say the training that is offered by company like mine or others, where we really focus on business problems. So when we ask to provide training, we have to understand what the problem is and how we can use Earth observation to solve the problem. And more, we have integrated platforms where Earth observation, AI, and other ERPs are all combined to reduce the friction for non-technical users. And finally, the previous presentation mentioned also the partnership. So that's also something that is working very well in our environment. There are more collaborations between Earth observation providers, universities, startups, and even large companies. Next, please. What must change? We're going to have to start with the need for training that has to be less technical. So we need to train people without wanting them to become technical experts. And in the private sector, it's very important to address the real need of folks that we're training. And of course, we need also to scale the learning resources and making sure that now that we have AI, that we can really take advantage of what AI is bringing to improve our approaches. And also very important is to stay away from the one-fit-all approach and making sure that we have sector-specific trainings that we can develop and train folks in a way that would be beneficial to them. Next, please. So I mentioned AI. So AI is lowering the Earth observation barrier, but it's also raising new capability requirements. So we need to have AI power automation. We are really happy to use that natural language interface that AI allow us to let people ask questions in the way that they want and get the answers the way that fits their need, and of course make the best use of pre-built analytics and models. Next, please. So what this means for capacity building, the technical barriers are failing, the cognitive barriers are rising, and of course, decision integration skills matter more. And that's why we see this increased demand, but also, I would say, with the offer of capacity building is increasing as faster as the demand also increases. Next, please. So I will finish my presentation by just sharing some ideas on this. So like the takeaway for me will be the private sector demand is growing, like I was saying, and it's also, we need also to have it evolve so that EO tools can enable decision making, and we want to use AI as much as we can. And AI is also democratizing the access to EO, but of course there's the need for capacity building is not erased. Actually, there is, in my mind, more there should be more demand for capacity building, and the private sector needs training that reflect this new reality. So that's it for me. I hope I stay on time.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the presentation, Albert, and the really important takeaways. It's great to hear, especially from starting with the public sector, going into the challenges of the private sector. And now we'll welcome our third and final presenter, Dr. Gianna Chavarro-Rincon. She's the Senior Project Officer and Faculty of Geo-Information Science and Earth Observation at the University of Twente. And she's been very involved with EO Africa Research and Development. She's been working with researchers and decision makers there for nearly 6 years. So she'll bring a slightly different perspective, but I have a feeling we'll see some common themes and challenges. So we'll hear about now the perspective of Earth observation capacity providers. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thanks for introducing me, Natasha. So let me share my screen. Let's see if it works. Do you see my presentation? Okay, I think I have to monitors again. Yes, it's in my screen.
Perfect.
It's
Thank you.
in your screen, actually. Thank
Yes.
you. So let me introduce myself a little bit further. So my name is Diana Chavarro-Rincon. I am a senior project officer at the University of Twente ITC, and my own background is in applications of Earth observations in environmental studies. I have a PhD in ecohydrology from the University of Twente. I have participated in the acquisition and coordination of several EO-based related projects, mainly for capacity development. We also do projects for research, but I mainly participate in projects on capacity development. The faculty ITC of the University of Twente, just briefly, is a well-recognized organization for academic education, scientific research, and technology development in Earth observation and geoinformation, in particular in the Global South. We used to be an independent institute for capacity development, and since 2010, we joined the University of Twente as a faculty. The main focus areas of the faculty ITC are resource security, geospatial AI, urban futures, and disaster resilience, all with the core activity of studies and research in geoinformation. Let me showcase one of my probably most recent projects and probably most meaningful projects in capacity development, and this is the Africa R&D facility. It's an ESA funded project, funded by European Space Agency. So I think this project is known for many of you in the audience, but let me quickly describe the project. It's a part of the EO Africa initiative of the European Space Agency, in which there is a special interest in a collaborative research and development activity between Europe and Africa. The facility it has been running for 5 years. We are in the 6th year, and the pillars of the Africa R&D facility are building a community. We want to foster this strong partnership between the two continents. We want to facilitate research and development, for development by means of research tandems between Europeans and Africans. We are leveraging digital tools, and we are by providing a computing platform used to learn and practice about cloud computing. And we have a comprehensive capacity development program that we call the Space Academy. So here, this is the African numbers. You can see this from the dashboard, amount of users, countries. The facility is oriented towards Africa, but we have participants from many countries, many nationalities, and we have conducted several courses, several modalities in capacity. Also, we have MOOCs, we have hackathons, but probably the most successful are the face-to-face courses. So here you can see where we have conducted the courses face-to-face. We have also conducted several online training. And as I said before, we have a MOOC. We have we are supporting universities in developing curricula, etc. So I think there are some links to the project you can visit. The final thing I want to show about the R&D facility is the component on research. So as I said before, we are supporting research tandems. We have supported 50 collaborative projects. So this is in the form of a research tandem. So one PI from Europe, one PI from Africa, they make a tandem, and they receive a small grant to do some research on Earth observations. The EU-Africa R&D facility, and in general the EU-Africa initiative, is so far oriented towards challenges in food and water security in Africa. This is an example. This is the last call, the call number 4, in which these 10 projects were selected. You can see here the countries that form the tandems, the title of the project, and there is a link in the website in case you want to visit a little bit know more about the facility. This is an example. This is not the only project we have at ITC, but because it's heavily on Earth observation applications, and especially for Africa, I think it's a good example of our activities as capacity development providers in the Global South. So from that perspective, and I was actually invited to this panel to represent that component of the ecosystem, the capacity development providers. So based on that experience, let me just share some of the issues we have so far spotted. So there is a technological shift. So from data scarcity to data abundancy means different technology. So machine learning models to replace algorithms and workflows to process large amount of data, for example. We have also a skill gaps. So new competencies are becoming essential. So I think it's very clear for all of us: AI and data science integration, machine learning, deep learning, foundational models, GeoAI, cloud native EO. But we also need to build capacity on other aspects, and this is less frequently mentioned. And this is very much related to the ownership and sustainability of certain initiatives. So we as capacity development providers, we have also to think about additional components. We have to build capacity on computing sciences, on ICT, and also on more technical aspects, especially when initiatives result in infrastructure. We have seen previous initiatives in which infrastructure has been built, and after some years we have revisited and the infrastructure is abandoned or non-operational. Why? Because we also need to build capacity in certain aspects that will result in good governance of the initiatives, including good maintenance and also having good resources for making the initiatives operational, for automation, etc. So it's not only scientific topics, but also these additional topics important when we build capacity. I put here an antenna because this is one of the things we have noticed, that when antennas are installed, after some time they are not operational. Of course, there are also issues related to ethics and governance, open science, fair principles. I think I don't need to get deep into that. And of course, the rapid rise on artificial intelligence is a blessing or a burden. Well, we have to think. There are pros and cons. Of course, the information is democratized and is more accessible. We don't need learners. Learners don't need experts. We don't need the trainers all the time there, because students, learners can learn at their own pace. So that's a good thing. But also there are controls. So we have to rely on special software. There are a lot of ethical issues that I'm not mentioning here, but as a capacity development providers, we have to think what is important. The question is not whether we use or not AI. This is out of the question. The question is how. So we must consider under which conditions we use it. The National Research Council, NVO in Dutch, published an article, very interesting, between promise and dependency is called, and is very interesting. So as is mentioned there, AI should be an enabler, not a substitute for expertise, because learners may accept outputs uncritically. So we risk losing the analytical capabilities. So there is an evolving approach for that. So we need to change our approach, adapt to the time and technology. We need to transform. Not that the question is not now where to obtain EU data, how to analyze it, but how to transform into operational services for decision making. Instead of maps, we have to produce services. Instead of hoping for course attendance, we need to expect that they are able to demonstrate the applications, the participants. So also EO is becoming a horizontal capability, not really a discipline, an individual discipline, and that is important when we support curricular development at universities. So these skills have to be horizontal in all the domains possible. And again, we have, I think this is repeated, sorry. So this was not meant to be here, but okay. The other approach is that, well, we need to ensure that anyone who needs Earth observations can access the right knowledge at the right depth, with the right depth at the moment, and they is needed for decision making. So the different audiences need different training. So here are some examples of like EO specialists or specialists with EO skills, as I said before, but policymakers need different type of training, different type of skills. For instance, emergency managers need real-time operational work is not the same as a policymaker, so the time scale is different. So what is working? That is to finalize my presentation. What actually is working is simple. We have to maintain the traditional concepts because they work. Face-to-face training is preferred over online training. That personal contact is super important. Collaborative research that results in co-creation, and the involvement of the private sector in research tandems is very important because that make initiatives more sustainable. Researchers don't have the connection with the real world in some cases, and people working in the private sector lack the time and resources to do research. So they have to be connected in the form of incubators or accelerators. And of course, the trainer, another traditional aspect and method to train is very important. And at the respect, as we have done in EO Africa, we are supporting curricula development in EO. So these are the things that are really working. So the main question, how to build skills which ensure that the services are building are useful for stakeholders, right? So this is actually an evolving approach. Thanks, and I think I give way to the discussion. So I will stop sharing my screen. I think here, yep.
Thank you so much for the presentation. So many interesting ideas and reminders about what works. So I really appreciate that. So let's shift now. We have plenty of time for questions. I see we already got one question in the chat. Please post your questions in the chat if you have questions for the discussion. I have plenty that I can ask. And so I'm going to start with one, and then we'll go to Mary Neely's question in the chat. So one thing that, obviously we heard was the use and the relevance of AI for the production of training, for user experience, also for analysis and research. But I would love to get all of your feedback on AI literacy. So when you hear AI literacy and even thinking about the broader challenges that AI is bringing us, what do you think about, and what do you think we can do to encourage AI literacy as we're in this new era?
Who go first?
Alejandro, if you'd like to start.
Oh, okay. I think AI will not replace the analysis, the human analysis. It will improve it. It will expand it. It give us more tools to have in a shorter period of time. I think AI is the Geo AI right now is something that is democratizing the access to advanced analytics. Exactly, but it gives us the opportunity to understand better the science behind in that best in a easier way. I think AI will not replace because that is another discussion, right? There are many people like this discussing, but if the AI will replace the human factor, I don't think so. I don't think that way. I see it as a powerful tool that will help us to make decisions better.
Other thoughts? Maybe I'll add, something that we've been thinking about at NASA for AI, and when we think about literacy, is what are the pitfalls, and how do we train our workforce? How do we build the capacity of our scientists and our applications developers to interact with AI so that it can enable our science? So just something else to think about.
Yeah,
but
if I can also add to that, I agree, of course, with Alejandro when AI is really democratizing education. but it also creates some new skill gaps, right? So I will see AI, the automation will remove the need for deep Earth observation expertise, right? But it will increase the need for interpretation, for validation, and for decision integration skills. And I mentioned in my presentation the natural language interfaces. So those interfaces and the pre-built model will also lower the barriers, but it's also going to raise the expectation for speed, accuracy, and better explanations. So the real challenge is not really using AI tools, is trusting and operationalizing the output. That's what I can say, about AI in EO capacity building.
Yeah, if I may also contribute to the discussion, yeah, I agree with my two colleagues. There are all these issues, and I agree with Alejandro. AI will not replace analytical thinking, will not replace our the work that can be made, or yeah, can be made without it. But it's a reality, and especially in view of the explosive growth on data availability. Now we don't imagine doing this without AI. But I think, as I mentioned before, with the pros and cons, we have to look at the positive part, and it's like all this facilitation on computing, on analyzing all these tools that are available. We have to really profit from it, but we have to, as I mentioned in my presentation, maintain the analytical and critical approach, because we all have used AI tools, and actually you can get whatever you want to get, right? And put it in a very glossy way. So we have to be very critical on what we receive, and maintain the capabilities of analyzing and making decisions. And I don't see that these two things are in conflict, but in our case, as a capacity development providers, we have to keep both things separate and insist on the analytical skills that cannot be replaced.
I know we have a question in the chat, but that we'll get to, but I do want to follow up, because I think that's key, Diana. I appreciate you saying that. So just a follow-up question on this: how do we make sure as capacity developers to build these skills so that we use this new technology in the right ways? So what are the needs that we need to incorporate into our programming? How do we bridge this gap so that the future Earth observation practitioners and scientists can fill this gap and use AI in the right ways?
Yes, I think we still need a solid foundation in remote sensing, GIS, the geodesy, spatial analysis, and Earth system science to use the AI. If someone does not understand what they are observing, AI just simply will help them to make mistakes faster. The future is not a choice between one of another. I think it's a coexistence of two will give us an opportunity to amplify the knowledge and to get there faster. But as I mentioned, is still need a solid foundation on all these science areas. And for emerging countries, this balance is especially important because human resources are often limited. Then the AI is a tool to strengthen and to accelerate our development.
Yeah, and I agree with all what you just said, Alejandro. I think for a long time, most EO training were focusing on sensors, on band, on image processing. Now more and more, and that's what I'm seeing, on the ground. We need to focus on business problems, decision workflows, and if that's the shift or the focus goes from, sensor to like business problems, that's where we want AI to actually help not only understand those business problems, but provide help, solve those business problems using EO. So that would be for me the AI approach on EO capacity building. So helping with business problems, with decision workflows, and shape the type of training that we deliver.
Thank you. Deanna, would you like to add anything on this question?
What I want to add actually is that it's very important to keep in mind that not all the challenges and issues related to EU capacity development are related to AI. But of course, we talk a lot about AI because of all these issues that you have already mentioned. But I think when we agree that the human skills will not be replaced, but actually is a great tool also in view of resources in especially in the global south, then we agree we have to look at it in a positive way. By the way, when we talk about resources, we have to also keep in mind that even in the case of the private sector, that would result in certain optimization of resources, let's put it that way. Also, we have to keep in mind that applying technology also requires resources that are only available. Internet, for instance. We train in Africa, and I think this is the very first constraint we have, not even talk about a permanent internet connection and good bandwidth, but also just electricity. So in many cases, even that is not something we have to take for granted. But having said that, I think it's also good to mention the other challenges that are not related to AI, because they exist. Like I mentioned, for instance, the applying the FAIR principles is we talk about in Europe, we talk a lot about it, but actually it's more difficult than we think, because making a workforce reproducible is more difficult than we believe and requires building capacity in additional domains. As I mentioned in my presentation, we need to build capacity in computing sciences, not that later will be used in processing EO, but we fail on that. And we expect, for instance, we fund our research tandems, and one of the conditions is that every research has to be interoperable, reusable. But even in Europe, researchers struggle with that. So I think this is something that we need to strengthen as capacity development providers.
Thank you. So I'll go to the chat. So a question from Mary from NOAA, initially asking if you could speak to the program success metrics, and if number of people you've trained might be one of those metrics, but also maybe how has using AI in the trainings attracted people and affected your metrics, but also could you use AI to help if I'm getting the question right, Mary, I think, can you use AI as a student and program success assessment tool? Anyone want to take a stab at that?
Maybe I can take this one because universities struggle with that. So I am not an academic, but I work at a university, and this is a big issue because the assessment tools also have to evolve in view of AI. So I don't think forbidding the use of AI at educational organizations is the solution, but the assessing methods have to evolve, and the assessment tools have to be able to identify if a person is able to think, even if he or she uses artificial intelligence. So yes, it's a big issue, and especially in universities.
Yeah, I will add to that. I actually going to try to shift my hat. So I will start with my my previous hat as leading the Severe project with USAID and NASA. So over there, what we used to do was having indicators that we set up at the beginning of the program, and of course every year. So like number of student trained and things of that nature. So we have an indicator-led approach in evaluating the success of a program. Now switching to my Trimble and now GeoDEV private sector hat, it's all about KPIs. So we don't focus that much about indicators, the type of indicators that we had with USAID. Now is how much can we generate from the training or from the capacity building programs that we're leading. And yes, still the number of trainees is an important element, but the expectation, the impact is looked differently, whether you're seeing it as a development program or if you see it as a private sector activity.
Alejandro, would you like to speak to this before we move on to another question?
Yes, I think quantitative indicators are very important as a qualitative, because we have both here. We are trying to reach to see our impact in terms of quantity of people, our quantity of projects, quantity of institutions reached, but also we added a qualitative, because sometimes we change one life with these capacity building programs. And this life is changed, and that impact in the long term is bigger than 10 people trained and they just don't use it, the knowledge. I can just add that this for all the previous colleagues has been said. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to take a moment now before we go into some other questions from the chat to ask Robert Eckardt from the EO College to join us for a moment, special guest, surprise guest, because I think Robert can speak to some of these interesting questions about how AI is being used in the EO College and in shaping tools and resources, building new tools, also in content, learning pathways, and some of the things we've been talking about. So Robert, would you like to just say a few words about your experience?
Sure. Thank you for the introduction. First of all, just a comment. So me personally, I'm not really sharing that sentiment that AI will not take many of the jobs to date. It's a philosophical discussion almost, but what I think will happen is maybe not many jobs get lost, but there will not be any new jobs created. Classic example is if you have a senior software developer, he might not hire, or she might not hire new junior software developers because the AI can do that task perfectly fine. So maybe 5 people do not get a job in the future. So maybe job loss is not the issue, but the creation of new jobs definitely will suffer. Also the loss of jobs, if I'm honest, I can see that coming in the very near future. If you do not make yourself AI ready, your job will be in danger, especially in those fields where you have to process text, process data, process information in general. So anything that is not a physical labor, we really have to keep our eyes open. That's just my opinion on that topic. And I'm glad I could intervene here a little bit. So I do not really have a structured presentation prepared. I have one example of the things that we do that I can show you in a second. So what we are trying to do at EO College and Ignite Education, which is our learning technology company, we are basically trying to build AI, or let's say LLM. So we have to distinguish between artificial intelligence and large language models. This is let's say a segment of artificial intelligence, but this large language model technology is a new evolving technology since a couple of years. What we are trying to build based on large language models is systems that are either facing the students or systems that are either facing the teachers. So capacity building in both directions. So capacity building in the classical sense that you enable people to learn something and so on and so on. But also we try to enable the teachers to work better, work faster, work more structured, achieve results in a much more coherent way, and so on. So this is the first very important distinguishing, systems that are facing the learner, systems that are facing the teachers. With all the experimentation that we have done in the last couple of years, one very clear pattern is emerging, in my opinion, that yes, you can do many things with ChatGPT and its competitors with their nice chat interfaces and so on. What I found is that ChatGPT in code, this is like a Swiss Army knife. It can do everything. So you can open a bottle, you can cut some rope, you can do anything with it, kind of reproducible if you put the same prompt anytime and you copy and paste stuff back and forth and so on. And maybe if you're lucky, the results are consistent or very well and good. But the analogy that I would like to make is, would you like to have your brain surgery done with a Swiss Army knife, or would you prefer a scalpel for that task? So what we are trying to build is very deterministic systems that use the power of large language model to do one very specific task, but do this specific task incredibly well, much better than any human in terms of time needed and, I don't know, context processed, and also much better than any deterministic programming software, just because it uses large language models as an example. I just want to show one example that we are very close to finishing. Well, I just share my screen, then it's probably also easier to understand what I'm talking about. So what you can see here is it's a prototype of an interface for a recommendation engine that we are building at the moment. Recommendation engine means that we are building a tool for learners to find the best learning resources on the topic of hazards with Earth, so monitoring hazards, natural disasters, volcanoes, fires, what have you, to monitor those disasters with Earth observation. So there are hundreds, if not thousands, of resources, online courses, webinars, PDFs, so many different things are out there. And if I'm trying to learn this in a traditional way, I have to search the entire internet to find all those resources. If I'm lucky, then maybe there are organizations like CEOs or EOTEC DevNet that prepare
Robert,
maybe a nice.
can you zoom in? I'm sorry to interrupt
Okay,
you.
yeah, sure.
To make it a little, because this is great. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so maybe you are lucky and you have organizations like CEOs or EOTEC DevNet that prepare you an overview of those learning resources. So you can scroll through a table of hundreds or thousands of resources, manually curated and everything. And then we were thinking, okay, maybe we can improve that process a little bit. What if there is a database of all those learning resources and I can just use natural language to search for the resources that are actually relevant to me? So that's what I'm talking about. Deterministic system, very clear use case. The LLM is just there to translate my natural language request into search parameters and return a result from a database. So as I said, here's a mock-up of our interface. So maybe I want to learn flood mapping with Sentinel-1 and Google Earth Engine. I'm a beginner, prefer hands-on, and so on. So whatever natural language request I have, maybe I can specify language, the level I want to work on, which style of learning I prefer, what is my overarching goal. So giving some variables, parameters to the system so that it can actually choose the best resources for me. And if I run this recommendation, then I get a curated list of resources that are 100% applicable to my particular case, and even maybe ranking why this resource might be good for me and how this ranking is basically constructed. So this is my example of a deterministic system that in the back end uses large language models to basically classify the user query into a deterministic structure and returns also a deterministic result each and every single time. Doesn't hallucinate because it draws results from a database and such things. And this is just a very, very small example. This is just the tip on top of the tip of the iceberg of what is possible nowadays. But this is like one of the very first concrete examples that we will provide to learners in the very near future. Yeah, that's my short introduction into what we are building here at EO College. Maybe you have some questions, maybe some other related topics that I could also talk to. Feel free to let me know. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for giving us this snapshot. And I think it relates to what we started the discussion with in terms of AI literacy is, you know, here's a chance, or here's a case where you're using AI to support with large language models, kind of how to access these trainings. And that's different than using AI for some other applications, or even using AI to do the coding and the analysis and the research. So I think it sounds to me like that's a key gap in understanding what works in what place. So this is a large language model, but as someone pointed out in the chat, we don't necessarily want our future Earth observation practitioners to not understand how to code and to do the image processing themselves and to understand some of those components. So I think that gets back to that initial point. So I want to ask, because you brought up some, you know, you started, Robert, your remarks with some maybe you're not necessarily sold with the AI being a savior for our industry. So maybe for all four of you, if you have thoughts on, you know, given the current state of capacity development for using and applying Earth observations, and considering some of these challenges we've talked about, the need for Earth observation information increasing, private sector is really, you know, leading that charge. The science is increasing and improving. You know, even at NASA, we have the NISAR mission just launched, and everybody's worried about how will we use all this information. It's so much data. So the capabilities are out there, but is the capacity matching? So if you could wave a magic wand and fix something or add something to your programs that would address these gaps, what would that one thing be? Whoever has a thought.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Well, no one sees no one takes the question, but I think there is no magic wand here. We need to work on that. This is my personal opinion, and also coming back to Robert's comment about the AI will not replace. Of course, AI will replace many jobs, many things, but especially in Earth observation, I think the human analysis will be very difficult because we need many basic bases in order to understand what we are seeing. Many countries already have access to data right now. Many countries already has access to technology, but sometimes there is a lack of sustained human and institutional capacity because the data, the infrastructure is useless if you don't have someone to understand and make decisions with that. If we can find a magic wand, I think capacity building is the enabler, big enabler, on my personal opinion, in order to make the bridge between the need and the solution. We need to have knowledge transfers, capacity building, because many of those solutions is already there. The only thing is people don't know how to reach, how to download, how to process, or how to extract value from them. For me, if I select magic wand, it will be training. It will be knowledge transfer and capacity building. Thank you.
Yes, I want to add, 20 years ago when we were talking about EO and going in countries, they will select some of the most technical folks to come and learn more about, what they can get from satellite. So even the severe program was very technical in nature. So most of the folks that we were dealing with were technical folks within their own countries. What I've noticed recently is that regardless of the type of country that we're mentioning, the private sector EO demand is expanding, but it's not expanding the way we expect or the way we anticipate it. The fastest growth is coming from non-technical user communities. So people they don't want to learn remote sensing. They want EO to provide answers for their specific needs, and also they want EO to be integrated into their existing workflows. When you order through Uber, you don't want to know what's the engine behind Uber. You want to understand why your food is coming from point A to point B. And if you develop some business model around that, same thing. You want the flow of all the technical aspect to be integrated in your workflow. So for me, the AI, we will make the best use of AI if AI allow us to integrate EO directly into business workflow. And that would be my magic one.
Any other magic to share?
I have a comment also for Robert. He mentioned about the large learning models, and here at IDC we have been discussing that issue, and we have some concerns about how to keep product ownership when we let the large learning models build our service stack. If we risk creating dependency, and we wonder if it wouldn't be maybe more convenient just to run small but open weight models in our own hardware to avoid that dependency. Or I don't know, I'm curious on getting to your point of view on that.
I mean, this is a question that is actually older than large language models. This goes back to, okay, what Office suite do you use? Microsoft. So you're also depending on the data privacy policy of Microsoft and so on. So this is a question that goes much beyond that. What I am doing is I'm looking per task, which kind of model do I need? Do I need really the big, strong commercial agent-ready models like OpenAI or Anthropic or something like this? Or is it just a small, for example, a classification task? So take a text and put it in one or two classes, which can be done by any of those small local models perfectly fine. So per case, I'm checking which model do I use for this particular task. Right now, we are in the situation that the commercial models are much, much more powerful than the open source models. This is the case. My projection would be what I'm already seeing in many project contexts and also in the context of the European Space Agency, that especially the large organizations are aware of that problem and starting to maybe build their own large language models. ESA, for example, is just working on a large language model called Eve, which is based on Mistral, the European alternative to OpenAI and so on, which is particularly trained to answer questions about Earth observation. So it's trained with scientific literature around Earth observation. Specialized models for a particular case, probably also much better in data privacy and so on. And I think this trend will continue, that in the future, there will not be only like 5 big players, but like very specific players for very specific tasks. And yeah, also the local models will get stronger and stronger. Then we only run into the problem of where, on which high computing power computers will those models run actually. So where's the data center that hosts all the large language models that we need to get independent of, I don't know, US-based companies or China-based companies or something like this? That will be the question, I think.
Well, I think we're at the time where we need to conclude our discussion. And I want to thank all of our speakers. And Robert, thank you for jumping in. Thank you for all of our three presenters and for sharing your insights in this discussion, which was really rich. And in fact, there were excellent questions in the chat that we didn't have time to get to on local knowledge in Earth observations and AI, trust in AI and Earth observations, and then even how do we use existing projects and existing activities as kind of a bed of capacity development. So we'll have to continue the conversation, but thank you to all of our speakers. So before I pass back to the Secretariat to close us out, I did want to just share a couple of things that stood out to me that I want all of us to keep in mind. And those are just a few things that I wrote down that I think are worth remembering. Number one, we're not, even though AI is new and that this technology is still evolving, we're really not starting from scratch. And there are so many incredible activities around the world that we can learn from. And there are playbooks, like in Paraguay, there's examples of things that are working, like in the EO College. And we still have a lot to do, but I think it's important to remember that we talked about examples of things that are working, even as the technology is evolving. I also think, even though we were here to talk about this evolving technology, we all kept coming back to the humans, face-to-face training, making sure the core capabilities in the science are there. You know, I see the students behind Alejandro in his lab, capacity building being the enabler. So we probably need to think about these two components at the same time, of the evolving technology and the need to continue to think about where we bring that in, but also the human perspective here, the students, the young professionals, building capacity, developing capacity, and using technology in the right ways. So again, great discussion. Great ideas. We didn't have time to even cover everything, but this was a fantastic conversation. So I appreciate all of you, and I will pass it back to the Secretariat to close us out. Thank you.
Okay, before we finish, I would like to invite you to stay engaged with EOTEC DevNet and CEO's WGCapD. Here on the slide, you can see the ways how you can engage with us, join our regional communities of practice, contribute to our flat and draft tools trackers, share your training opportunities through the CEO's training calendar, and connect with peers through our online member platform. EO capacity building is a community effort, and we would be delighted to have you involved. So with that, I would like to hand over to Erin for the final closing. So thank you from my side for joining us today.
Thank you, Martina. For some reason, my camera's not switching on, but I am here behind that dark screen. And just also a very sincere thanks to all of the participants joining us today. We know your time is so valuable, and you've got so much on your plates already, and we're so grateful that you chose to be with us today. We'll have another webinar in November. We also look frequently to partner with others, Geo, UNUSA, others in our leadership team. If you're interested in partnering on a webinar, feel free to reach out to us. The best place to find us is through our website. You can get our email there, and you can see a lot of our tools and trackers and place to register to get our newsletter. Also, the CS training calendar is a great which is maintained by the systems engineering office, is a great place to keep track of what's happening with events. So very sincere thanks to Albert, Diana, Dan, Robert, Alejandro, and of course, Natasha leading us in this conversation. Thank you all very much. And we'll look forward to seeing you again at one of our upcoming meetings. So all the best. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of the day.